And for more on the Tinubu administration, I'm joined by General Secretary, Arewa People's Initiative, Abu Andrew. Mr. Andrew, thank you for joining us on the program. The Council of State has now issued a strong warning against regime change through unconstitutional means, following the recent protest we saw across the country. How significant do you think this warning is, particularly in deterring such calls, and what implications does it have for the future of our democratic governance?
So yeah, thank you for having me. Beyond the warning, I think what is more significant is the fact that a vote of confidence was passed on the president, and that gives reassurance to every Nigerian that, regardless of party affiliation, of course, don't forget that a Council of State meeting involves, everybody that comes from different political party. So regardless of party affiliation, everybody saw the need that, it's important for all Nigerians to, come together and do this. So, yeah, passing a vote of confidence on the president, there's no better time than now, for what has been done. And it is very, very significant, to renew that hope that every Nigerian, needs to latch on to know that this country, is heading in the right direction. So yes, and also the fact that, people are calling for regime change does not tell too well about the situation of things as it stands, in the country today. I would always advocate for all Nigerians to see this country as the only country we have. And at every point in time, if there is anything we need to do, is to see how the government succeeds in any policy or in the direction they are moving the country to. Now, this country is beyond just the president. If the president succeeds, Nigeria succeeds. If the president fails, Nigeria fails. So that point where, we all need to come together to see that, things have to change for the betterment of every Nigeria. And the only way that can be achieved is through that partnership that we need to, partner with the government to ensure that, we get things right as a people and as a country.
But is there a sense to which you agree with the feelers coming from that meeting that the recent unrest was an unconstitutional attempt to force a regime change, which, according to them, was successfully thwarted?
So it depends on the prism from which, people view these things from. So there are reasons put out there, for hunger, for hardship and everything. Now, I sit here today. If I tell you that things are not difficult in the country, I'll be telling a big lie, because the president, who is the commander-in-chief, has agreed to the fact that things are tough, and he has always appealed to Nigerians to be patient, and that he feels the pains of every Nigerian. And unfortunately, if there were other ways for him to take to get this right without the hardship that he's putting on the average Nigerian, he would have gone through that path. So the president, who is the #1 citizen, acknowledges the fact that things are tough. So yes, we agree to the fact that, constitutionally people have a right to protest. Of course, that right is for peaceful protest. Unfortunately, when that started, it dovetailed into a situation that was beyond what I'm sure even the people that called for this protest could even imagine, So I think at this point, what the evaluation we need to do is to see that where are the missing links, and where can we, close ranks together to make things and make life better for the average Nigerian. So for me, it still boils down to where you are looking at it from. Of course, we condemn in totality the people that were calling for regime change. There is no place in the Constitution where a democratically elected government can just be taken out without the process of the ballot. So at every point in time, if there is anything that Nigerians need to be conscious of, is the fact that for any government to be ousted, it has to be through the ballot. And the next election that is going to happen at the level of presidential is going to be in 2027. So I think everybody should, for now, see how they can partner with the government and ensure that, this country succeed for all of us.
You talked earlier about how the Council of State unanimously passed a vote of confidence in President Tinubu's administration. Precisely, how do you think this endorsement changed anything? What does it mean for the president's leadership and his policy agenda?
Yes, so I think that this will further boost the confidence of the president and at least give him a sense that he's moving in the right direction. Okay? Of course, we acknowledge the fact that there are challenges. We are not running away from that fact, and the president always acknowledges that fact at every time he has, had the opportunity to speak to the issues bedeviling the country. Okay, so yeah, so we acknowledge the fact that there are challenges, but you see, what is more important at this time of the country is how do we solve these problems that are bedeviling us as a nation, and do I think that these problems can be solved just by the government alone? No. There must be that partnership, and that partnership must come from the Nigerian people. And part of what can make that happen is for people to have commitment to the fact that this country is the only country we have. Regardless of how you feel or regardless of how much you think the country has failed you, we cannot run away from the fact that for this country to work, everybody must play a role and play a part. You must, in that little space you find yourself, you must be able to do that thing, that projects the country. Okay, so at every given point in time, we as a people and a supporter of this government always know that there are challenges and the government is addressing those challenges. Yes, people might have their reservations about how slow or how it is going. Of course, it is well within people's rights to feel in the way they feel. But what is more important is, the government is a government that listens, and the government is one that always responds when the people raise issues around things, even policies and things that have to do with governance.
Do you think that this endorsement also automatically endorses the performance of his cabinet members in actualizing these policies?
The endorsement was very clear. It's an endorsement to the president, okay? There's no part of the endorsement that said anything about his cabinet. Of course, we acknowledge the fact also that, people, the people serving in the president's cabinet, just a few of them have done pretty well in the last, I think they just became 1 year in August, and we can reel out a few people who have done extremely well, in the last, 1 year since the president formed his cabinet, So we have ministers like the Interior Minister. We have, of course, we have the Minister of Youth Development, the Minister of State, who has done pretty well. Then there's one very critical part of our country that everybody is really, really concerned about, which is security. So I think that the Ministry of Defense, I don't think it needs to have two ministers, because it is very clear that the ministry, as it stands, the Minister of State is more pronounced and more out there and speaking to the issues of insecurity. And I think that, the fact that we have two ministers of state and one clearly is more proactive and more, out there and speaking to the issues. I don't think if I will advise that the president, when the president wants to reshuffle his cabinet or cut down, the amount of course, Nigerians are speaking about cutting down cost and cutting down cost of governance. I will advise that the Ministry of Defense, also considering the fact that there is a national security advisor, the Ministry of Defense should have, just one minister. And I think that the Minister of State is doing quite well, pretty well, addressing the issues of security. And such a person should be given a higher job to do his job very well. Of course, the Minister of Defense, who is the senior minister, should be maybe moved to another ministry where he can function better, because it is obvious that we have challenges with certain ministries. And the ministries that are doing well, so I also think that, yeah, the finance minister is doing very well.
It sounds pretty much like an indictment on the Minister of Defense. Do you have empirical data analysis to back up your claims as to the performance of the Honorable Minister? For instance, there's a Central Delivery Coordination Unit headed by the Special Advisor to the President on Policy Coordination. And we understand that there is an ongoing quarterly assessment of the performance of these ministers. Are you privy to that document? On what basis and what standard are you measuring this individual's performance?
So you see, performance speaks for itself, you know, and unfortunately for the scorecard that they have released, they have carried out on each of the respective ministries, unfortunately, the document has not been made public, you know, to Nigerians. But of course, performance doesn't hide, you know, and this is not reducing this conversation to, you know, one ministry. But of course, for the ministers that are performing, Nigerians know, we see these people, we know what they are doing, you know, and we see what they are doing, and they are out there. We speak to them. There are a lot of times people, I'm sure if you ask a lot of Nigerians, who is the Minister of Defense, they always call, you know, the immediate past governor of Zamfara State. You know, in different forums that has happened. I've heard people speak about him on TV, referring to him as the senior minister in that ministry. You know, so this conversation goes beyond. Now, it is for the president to see how he can reevaluate the performance of the respective ministers and see, for the ones that fall short, they should be outrightly shown the way out. And for the ones that can be redeployed to where they can function better, I mean, that can also be considered, okay? Because the truth is, the president cannot get this job done all by himself. The ministers must be kept on their toes to ensure that that policy and that renewed hope that the president has promised Nigerians must be kept and must be achieved. And that can only be done through the efforts and the performance of the ministers in respective ministries. You know, I don't think that as it stands today, anybody can confidently name 15 ministers out of the cabinet of Mr. President that is doing very well. Now,
talking about their performances, Mr. Andrew, there were unofficial talks earlier in the year about plans by the federal government to launch a platform that will enable Nigerians provide feedback on their assessment of each minister and their performance. Do you think there's a need to involve the Nigerian people in this assessment, if any is ongoing as we speak?
Absolutely. There's every need. I mean, the ministers are there at the you know, expense of Nigerians. You know, they are serving us. And at every point in time, we should be able to, you know, give our assessment on whether they are getting it right or not. Yes, we know that all their appointments is at the pleasure of Mr. President, but that notwithstanding, Nigerians should be able to, you know, come out to speak and say who is doing well and who is not, who is falling short. You know, because at the end of the day, we need this country to succeed. And for it to succeed, the people that have been saddled with the responsibility to deliver on the good of, you know, their offices must show resilience and must show action and must, you know, ensure that they do things that can help the president to achieve, you know, all the policies and what he has promised Nigerians, you know, before he became the president of the country. So, all right. I mean, there's work to be done. And as it stands now, I don't think Nigerians are patient enough, you know, for...
Yes. It sounds a lot like you're saying this administration's cabinet is due for a reshuffling, right?
Absolutely. It is due for a reshuffling. Unfortunately, Nigerians are not patient. We are not patient enough to start doing any trial and error as it stands today. So anybody that is falling short of the standard of what the president expects should be shown the way out. It's that straightforward and simple. You know, it's not a tea party. Everybody must, all hands must be on deck. And Nigerians, I'm encouraging every Nigerian to hold people accountable at every, you know, sector. hold people accountable and ensure that people are delivering on what their responsibility is as government officials.
A good place to leave it. Abu Andrew is General Secretary, Arewa People's Initiative. Thank you so much for talking to us on the program this evening.
Thank you for having me.